Thank you for listening to The Leader. Please do subscribe through your podcast provider and tell your friends about this show too. You can also contact us on social media through the hashtag #TheLeaderPodcast. Now, from the Evening Standard in London, this is The Leader.
Evening Standard, it's your Evening Standard.
Hi, I'm David Marsland. Does one person link 7 cases of coronavirus in the UK, France and Spain?
I asked Public Health England today, well, can't you explain the movements of this super spreader when he was back in the UK? Because, to be fair to him, he didn't realise he had the virus.
Evening Standard health editor Ross Lydall says a so-called super spreader has been identified as the British government announces new measures to contain the virus. And
it's a little crazy.
No translation needed there for Bong Joon-Ho, whose Parasite is the first non-English language movie to win Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Our film critic Charlotte O'Sullivan says it'll change the Oscars forever. Taken from the Evening Standard's editorial column, this is The Leader. For the whole thing, pick up the newspaper or head to standard.co.uk/comment. In a moment, the super spreader thought to have inadvertently helped the coronavirus outbreak in the UK. Coronavirus continues to spread. 4 more cases have been confirmed in the UK. More than 40,000 have been recorded worldwide. Nearly 1,000 people have died. The British government's declared it a serious and imminent threat, allowing emergency measures to be activated, including compelling people to stay in quarantine, something they could not legally do until now. Our editorial column welcomes the move, but says it's the spread of misinformation that's causing fear to rise in the public.
The government is treading a tricky line. On the one hand, it needs to get the country ready for what could be a mass outbreak of the disease, and fast. On the other hand, ministers need to avoid fueling panic. What matters is getting the right information to people, especially now that social media can distribute untruths in seconds. That's where more needs to be done. Search for the latest information from the government and you are directed to a simple page which sets out the facts. But it says almost nothing about the steps people might want to take here, whether face masks might make a difference, for instance. But this is also the moment to explain what could happen next. The hope is that the infection will be contained and the social and economic impact of it will be limited too. In order for this to happen, people will need to behave responsibly and require clear information, not guesswork, about what they need to do.
Our health editor Ross Lydall's been covering this story. Ross, there's a huge amount of disinformation and some flat-out lies about this virus out there all over social media. Where can people get accurate information about coronavirus?
The official source is the Department of Health website, and what they've done now with Twitter is that if you tap in coronavirus into the Twitter search engine, certainly in the UK, it will automatically default to the Department of Health website, and that then has regular updates. That sounds easy. Unfortunately, the problem is there's now so much information that it is updating itself, and it's updating perhaps 7 or 8 times a day on different bits of information, both for the public and for medical practitioners. And sometimes the differences or the updates are very minor, but it can create quite a folio of information, and it's not the easiest thing to wade through, to be honest.
And all of this just adds to the fear of the virus itself, doesn't it?
Yes, because we're seeing TV pictures, we're reading about it in the paper. The pictures certainly from China are very alarming. There's been more than 700 people tested in the UK in the last couple of weeks. Only 8 now have been found to have coronavirus, but so many people are subject to precautionary tests, and so therefore people can see these ambulances and paramedics in hazmat suit turn up, and it certainly looks alarming. And as we say, what we see in China looks very alarming indeed.
That 8 figure that you mentioned, that includes 4 new cases that were confirmed today, doesn't it?
That's right. So we had around 10 o'clock this morning, the Department of Health confirmed 4 more cases. 6 of the 8 are linked to the super spreader businessman from the Brighton Hove area who was initially in Singapore on a business conference at the end of January. He then returned to the UK, but via the sort of French Alps where he went skiing, we believe.
There's a word that's going to cause fear, super spreader. What exactly is a super spreader?
So a super spreader can either be one of 2 things. It's either somebody who has a higher than average dose of the virus and therefore is more infectious, or somebody who is in closer contact with more people than normal and therefore can spread the virus. So obviously we know that the super spreader businessman was on an EasyJet flight back to the UK. It's believed that the people who were then sent up possibly from Brighton to London today, it's believed they were all part of the same ski party in and around Chamonix, so perhaps they were in close contact there, hence that they have contracted the virus from this chap. I asked Public Health England today, well, can't you explain the movements of this super spreader when he was back in the UK? Because to be fair to him, he didn't realise he had the virus. I said, well, for example, if he was in Sainsbury's on the Saturday, or we know he was in this pub in Hove on the Saturday night, why can't you identify these locations? And they say, well, we don't want to create alarm amongst the population at large, essentially because you would have to have been very close to that person and for quite a long period of time. But that, of course, could apply to people who were sitting quite close to him on the EasyJet flight.
But this is that tricky line that the government and the health authorities have to try and navigate, giving enough information to the public and not causing further panic, isn't it? It must be incredibly hard.
Well, I'm not sure they actually made things any better this morning as well when Health Secretary Matt Hancock announced extra powers to essentially hold people in quarantine. Now this, we understand, relates to a person in the Wirral. We'll recall that a number of people were brought back, by their choice from Wuhan a few days ago at the end of last week. And they were brought back on a plane chartered by the British government on the condition that if you come back, then you have to agree to be in quarantine for 14 days. It now seems that at least one person there decided that he or she had had enough of being in quarantine and wanted to leave. Hence, the new powers today were essentially to give NHS staff the power to hold that person within quarantine for the full 14 days. So we had this rather alarming looking announcement that we have the department or the government looking for extra powers, when in fact the actual underlying risk of contracting coronavirus remains moderate.
Next.
Directors were supposed to be happy to win Best Foreign Language Picture. It was like, yes, be happy with that, pat you on the head. I think now you just can't get away with having a Best Picture that is more mediocre than the foreign language picture.
Evening Standard film critic Charlotte O'Sullivan applauds the Academy and wonders what's next for Hollywood after Parasite wins Best Picture.
풀타임으로 수업 어떻게 하시는지. Is it okay with you?
That's just about the only line of English in South Korean movie Parasite, which last night made history by being the first foreign language film to scoop Best Picture at the Oscars. The man behind it, Bong Joon-Ho, also won Best Director, and he spoke to the press through a translator after the ceremony.
제가 원래 좀 이상한 사람이에요. 그래서
So I'm just a very strange person. I just did what I've always done with great artists, with producer Kwok and my co-writer Han Jin-won, and with all my actors. It was the same process making this film, but we've had these amazing results. It still feels very surreal. I feel like something will hit me and I will wake up from this dream.
Well, for months, the Evening Standard film critic Charlotte O'Sullivan's been telling anyone who asks that Parasite is the best movie in years. Charlotte, I suspect I know how you're going to answer this, but regardless of language, did Parasite deserve to win Best Picture on its merit alone?
Oh yeah, it's such a wonderful movie on so many levels. It is groundbreaking. It's just the most original thing I've seen for years, and it's incredibly entertaining. So to have it win, it just sort of vindicates all these people who've been loving it for all these months. It won at Cannes, And, that was a great success for an art house movie, but it's no longer an art house movie because everyone gets it. My daughter actually said to me, "Is there anyone who doesn't like this movie, Mum?" I was like, "No, everybody loves this movie."
And you could see that in the audience at the Oscars themselves. In fact, when the director went up to collect his award, there was they tried to silence him, and then the audience came back and demanded that he be allowed to continue. So you can see that Hollywood's really embraced this film. Will it change the Oscars themselves now that a film that isn't in the English language can win Best Picture?
I definitely think so. I think until now, it's been this sort of weird two-tier system where directors were supposed to be happy to win Best Foreign Language Picture. It was like, yes, be happy with that, pat you on the head. And I bet all those directors were thinking, but my movie's better than the one that won Best Picture. Well, I think now you just can't get away with having a Best Picture that is more mediocre than the foreign language picture. I really think something radical has happened, that it's okay to tell a story in any language, and English is no longer the best language in which to tell a story.
Yeah, I think that's going to make things really exciting, because I wonder what foreign language films should have won Best Picture.
Well, I think there have been so many, like Fellini's La Strada, which was one of the first to win the Best Foreign Language Picture. That is a classic film. The idea that didn't get Best Picture that year is preposterous. Ingmar Bergman never won a Best Picture Oscar. I think there's been sort of miscarriages of justice going on, and everyone accepted it. I mean, some people, because they thought, oh, the Oscars are, the Americans just being American. Maybe the world shrunk a little bit. We're not so scared of subtitles. It's like we could call this How We Learn to Stop Worrying and Love the Subtitle.
And like you said, this is not an art house movie. It's extremely clever. It's really original, but it's a film that's built for a commercial audience, is it? And actually, there will be people who have never seen a subtitled film going to the cinema to see what all the fuss is about.
Exactly. And it's so universal. You get these two families, the Kims and the Parks, and the Kims are the sort of underclass family, and they slowly but surely infiltrate this rich, happy, shiny family, the Parks. And you are totally rooting for the Kims to kind of, to move up a level. And then something happens, which I can't tell you, as a spanner in the works. And you kind of realise how you yourself have been morally compromised, and how the whole system is just so corrupt that no one is really benefiting from it, even though the people at the bottom are obviously doing the worst. So, it's not simplistic. It's not goodies versus baddies. It really pushes you in so many different directions, and you just don't know what's going to happen. You really cannot predict it in any way, which is very exciting. Because my heart was just beating like a drum from halfway through when I was thinking, are the people I love going to die? It's very violent, I have to say, but not in a gratuitous way.
I wonder where the director Bong Joon-Ho goes next himself, because he's done English language features with Hollywood. He made a movie called Snowpiercer, I think, which was very good.
And Okja's wonderful.
That is wonderful.
Tilda Swinton, yeah.
So he's done the Hollywood thing, but I wonder if he now goes, do you know what? I don't have to do that anymore.
Well, he's such a maverick. I can imagine that we can't imagine what he'll do next. I hope he had a bit of a rest, because I think he's really been, doing his bit, sort of whining and dining and shaking hands and being charming and everything. And he probably just needs to get away from all these very powerful, privileged people who sort of ironically love his movie, which is all about how power and privilege corrupt. He needs to go off and think up his new masterpiece.
And that's The Leader. Check out the Evening Standard's audio news bulletins on your smart speaker. There's a new one every morning at 7 a.m. Just ask for the news from the Evening Standard. The Leader is back tomorrow at 4 p.m.